Hey, Resilient Queen. Hey. So, I am so excited to talk to you about Anchor today. It has really changed the game for me. So, I know, as women, we juggle so much. Like, I know for me, I'm usually going into my quiet time, trying to, spend time with God. I'm being juggling being a wife, being a mommy, and running this ministry. And then on top of all of that, going through this resilience and healing journey and just trying to show up as my best self every day. So after all of that, I just really love to pour into you, Queen. So to make sure that I do that, I use Anchor. I use Anchor to get these podcast episodes out. I make sure that it's like something that I can do that's a seamless process, and it has been. Let me tell you. Anchor has tools that allow you to record on your phone or your computer, and you can host it on all the distribution platforms that are known, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Everything is in one place, which makes it easy to go back to life. And best of all, it's free. Free. I'm okay with that. I know you are too, Queen. Okay, so now go download the Anchor app and try it out. Or go to anchor.fm to get started. Love you, Queen. Trauma to Testimony encompasses the proclamation of the truth and narratives of believers who have endured trauma and shook up their pain and purposely walk daily in their victories, giving God their yes. We are standing and affirming Revelation 12:11 on this podcast. Listen, the surrender, the resurrection, overcoming trauma, the becoming better, the inner work you have to do, all heavy. Join me each week as we dissect the walk of faith we take as Christian women who have endured some of life's pain and struggles. We will dive into having the hard conversations to grow a deeper relationship with God. This right here is from my girls who have endured trauma but have a lot of Jesus. Welcome back to the Trauma to Testimony podcast. This is your girl, Tony, and I am so excited to be here with you this week. And honestly, your girl is wiping her tears because God is so good. And as I was preparing to record this podcast episode, I had to really just sit for a minute because God really just met me this morning in my quiet time and started talking to me about just the area of my life where I feel like I still have not, you know, reached that place of peace in. And as always, like I always say, almost every episode, that I'm always going to keep it real with you guys about, getting to that bridge to cross over from trauma to testimony. And the testimony is understanding our story, understanding God in our story, understanding that, who we are in God, and how God loved us through the storms in life, and how God loved us through our circumstances. And, God was still there, even though it may have seemed that we were surrounded by other things. We're always surrounded by God, and we're always in the presence of God. And I'm so grateful because today we will be talking about just healing being bigger than just you. And I know a lot of the times when we're healing and overcoming things, we think about ourselves. We think about, all that we have to go through, and this person should have did this, and this person did this to me, and God, why aren't you moving to make them feel this type of way? Like it's this selfish reason for healing. And the thing is, healing is bigger than just you. When you start to heal, you'll start to realize that all those
wants that you had for the people who hurt you, like in a way that you didn't want the best for them, you'll start to see them as hurt people. You'll start to see, how can you serve as an example so that they can not do or inflict that pain again, or you'll talk to others who've been through the pain, or you'll have a different heart posture for those who have hurt you. And I'm telling you, I understand because those are some big girl things because your girl has been through it to the point where I have been talking to God and I'm like, God, I don't understand. Okay, I need you to break it down to me. All right, because I know that if I would have did it, something like that, there would have been smoke. Okay, but honestly, God allow certain things to happen because it's a part of a bigger plan. And once you start to heal with God, like you're really understanding what happened to you and the story and the histories of the people who may have inflicted pain on you, and you start to learn about the generational healing and the generational trauma that was taking place and how God is taking you out of some things, you'll start to really honor and love that, God, you love me through it. Your love is so big that even though I went through something, you love me so much more than that thing. Like I can let go of holding on to, me getting the vengeance. I can let go of me having to tell them about themselves. I can let go of, not forgiving them. I can actually walk and be free. I can do the things you called me to do. I don't have to be bound by the pain and by the past. So the healing is bigger than just you. So let's talk about it. So if you're a girl like me, you one day discovered that the hurt and the pain did not start just with you. There are pieces of your story that you still do not know and understand. You battle in between waiting to know and leaving it all alone, afraid that the knowledge will just mess you up all the way up. But what happens when the healing is too much or too big? Hmm. The thing is, God is healing you beyond what you think you're going through right now. So, all of the pain you may be having, all of just the thoughts, the actions, all the things that, you may include in your story right now, God is doing so much more. And when I was, sitting and, talking to God about this episode, the one thing God started just downloading to me on my spirit is that, the healing is bigger than you because your courage to heal heals beyond you. Healing becomes a part of your being, healing becomes a part of your nature. Healing impacts your walk, the way you talk, the love you pass on to your legacy and to others. Like you start to exude just this vibrant light of healing. People start to see you as an example of healing. People start to see you as an example of what God has done through you. You begin to change from the inside out, like your heart posture begins to change. Who you are begins to change. You start to invite those things of God like peace and joy and resting in God and love, and you start to have this splendor about yourself when you start to heal. Because if I'm no longer walking around with pain and hurt, and I'm no longer walking around holding all these people in bondage because I won't forgive them, then now I have the opportunity to invite in love and grace. I have the opportunity to invite in God's word to fill my mind and fill my heart when my thoughts are no longer, those thoughts of oppression, those thoughts of pain, those thoughts of harm. And you really make space for God when you start healing. Because imagine And what I see is just like a garden, a beautiful garden of flowers and a beautiful, just, and I'm literally seeing this like a beautiful garden. And now you get to grow, things get to grow in you, God gets to work through you, who you are. God gets to have this beautiful field of flowers that was always supposed to grow, that was always supposed to nurture, that was always supposed to show its beauty, that was always supposed to show its splendor. Now the light gets to be invited in because there's space for that light to be there. There's space because you're healing. God can use you more when you're healing. God can use you more when you're in a place of invitation, because when we are when we are hurt and bound by the things that happen to us, we're not so open to being like, okay, you know what, God, I can trust you. Or we're not always so open to helping others. We're not always so open to, being on the offense of life, and being inviting versus being on the defense of life. Never, always defending things, never letting our safety go, never allowing just God to move in us. And the thing is, the healing is going to impact your mind, how you think, act, react. Okay, react. I'm repeating that again because a lot of us react out of our trauma, but that's another episode. Um, and your whole being. And God brought this important story, and I believe God is going to speak through it. Your healing bursts up a nation. It bursts up a nation. The healing that you are doing now, it bursts up a nation. So a lot of us are holding on to a lot of things, and we want to control how the narrative is written. We want to control how things are happening. We want to control how God is going to do a thing. We want God to do what we want him to do. We want God to, I need you to solve this for me, God. I need you to come forth in this way. We always go forth in that, like knowing that we're broken people, knowing that we, God's thoughts are higher than ours. Like we literally are not thinking on the same level of God. And at this time, you have to notice that it's birthing up a nation. Whether you are going to be a generational curse breaker, is birthing up a nation. Whether you are starting a ministry or a business that is telling your story, is birthing up a nation. Because those people, when they hear your story, you're birthing up something inside of them. Okay, when your family, whether you're birthing with your family, you're birthing up a nation. Okay, you're having something that comes to you. You're having something that comes to you, that works inside of you and comes out in the way God needs it to come out when you're healing. You're having a story. You'll be amazed at how your story, when you first reveal your story as a hurt person versus when you're healing, and God has you deliver your story. Two different things. Two different things. An example of this is, I was like, when I first started telling my story, I told it in a certain perspective. And as God worked on me through just the years, God was starting to tell me that, listen, your perspective is not healed. And I had to say, okay, God, will show me and help me on how to change and shift my perspective to a healing perspective. And I started looking at things differently. I started seeing things beyond, just me. Because a lot of the times in healing, we think it's about ourselves, which, God is working on us through that, and I believe that a big part of it is us changing from the inside and letting that exude out. But it's bigger than just me, because I think about all of the women who are being impacted when they hear my story, all of my clients who I coach. I think about throughout the years, all of the women that I have talked to and I'm carrying along. And I think about my baby girl, my daughter, who is looking to me and who only wants to be loved. She don't need the extra drama. I'm just being honest. She don't need the extra drama. She don't need the extra, you know, me trying to impose my trauma on her. She don't need the extra stuff. And I think about all those things and how it's beyond me. I think about my legacy of continuing on a legacy of love, a legacy of God loved me more than I could ever have deserved, or I don't even deserve it. Like, I want to be able to, the legacy of, you know, telling and showing people how to go to God's word, like to find that healing for themselves. Like, it's bigger than just you. So God brought about this story, and it's so amazing how God spoke through it. And I'm going to read it first, and then we're going to talk about it. So, and let me tell you, when I start to reading God's word, you may hear me start to add some things in, because listen, I get hyped when I read God's word. I'm like, listen, let's do it. Let's go. Because I just, just in discovering God's word years ago, back in 2013, when I really, when God came in and changed my life, and I really, dedicated my life to the Lord and everything, I was like, wow, let's go. God's word is speaking directly to me, like at this very moment. So, all right. So, what we're going to be reading today is the story of Hagar, and this is Genesis chapter 16. Now, I am going to go through this whole thing because I do want you to get the context and want you to understand everything that's going on here, and just what God downloaded to me throughout the text. Okay. So, Hagar and Ishmael, that is the title of Genesis chapter 16. Now, Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abraham agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abraham had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abraham, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now she knows she is pregnant. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Your slave is in your hands," Abraham said. "Do with her whatever you think best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from? And where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai," she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." The angel of the Lord said to her, "You are now pregnant. Whew, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers." She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees me." Whew. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Mm. So, the first thing that I want to point out that God downloaded to my spirit is a lot of the times we have the heaviness of what someone else imposed upon us, and we just can't understand why they would do it to us. And we can't understand sometimes that why would God allow for this to happen? And a lot of the times things happen, and God still loves you, and God is still there, and God will meet you just like he met Hagar. God will meet you when you're running away. God will always be there in the midst of your pain. And the one thing is, Hagar had Ishmael. So Ishmael's name means God hears. And imagine being in a place where you just can't understand why do you have to be doing this, and you crying out and nobody's hearing you, and you have to submit to this person or this place or environment or your situation. And God comes and says, I hear you. I hear. And specifically, God said, for the Lord has heard of your misery. The Lord has heard of your misery. So whatever you're going through, whatever it is, the Lord has heard of your misery. Because I know the heaviness of healing, and the heaviness of understanding that, like, let's be honest, God, why I gotta be the one? That's a true testimony. I know of a lot of people who have been through things and have to do the hard healing, because healing requires work. Why do I have to be the one? Because my heart thinks, and let's be real, my heart thinks that me having the vengeance, or me getting revenge on these folk, okay, let's be honest, or me telling them about themselves, or me never forgiving them is going to impact that person. It is going to make me feel better. But in the end, I'm telling you, you would rather be at peace. You would rather feel joy. You would rather be free of that bondage of the trauma and walk into, just like Hagar did, when she says, imagine having this experience when you say, just like Hagar said, you are the God who sees me. I have now seen the one who sees me. Imagine having that experience when you're healing. Okay, God, I didn't understand my story at first. I didn't understand what I was going through. I didn't understand what it meant when I had to, I thought I was alone, when I had to go through these things, when I felt like I should have done something different, or I feel like, I should have a better life. Like, let's be honest. Felt like I should have had a better life. But you know what, God? You are the God who sees me. You have a plan for my life. Your will, whew, outweighs anything I could even think of doing with my life. That yes, in the midst of this hard trial, in the midst of me wanting to run away, you still meet me, God, and you still tell me that you see me, God. And imagine, one other thing I want to point out, because it keeps coming back to me, is when Sarai, blamed everything on Abram. Like, you're the reason I'm suffering. You're the reason I'm going through this. And the thing is, a lot of the times when we're broken and when we're hurt over a situation in our lives and we don't understand why we can't do this, or why it doesn't work out for me, or why not me, Lord, or why not my situation, and why, God, you aren't hearing me, we begin to impose our pain and trauma on others when we don't take the time to understand that the healing is beyond us. We don't take the time to put our all into God and understand that God has a plan. And I know it's easier said than done. Let's be real. It's easier to say, you know what, this is the person that did it to me. Let me just throw it on you. But a lot of the times when we are in a healing place and we are in a healing place where our mind and our heart and our body and our spirit and our soul is really sitting here, waiting on the Lord, sitting here worshiping the Lord, sitting here consuming all things of the Lord, so that whatever we think, act, know, and whatever we do and how we treat others, it comes out as what we have consumed, then no, the pain comes out, the hurt comes out, the trauma comes out, things that afflict pain on others come out. And now we have this transgenerational trauma. And we have this thing that we continue to be objects of the pain, objects of the hurt, objects of the trauma, objects of the things that have hurt us. And we don't even understand that we are literally holding this stuff in our bodies. We're storing up all this pain. Okay, it has a storage place, storing up all this pain. And every time we something happens to us, we pull from it. It comes out so naturally because it becomes a part of our language. It becomes a part of our communication. It becomes a part of the way we love others. It becomes a part of our very nature. We can't even see that we're hurting ourselves more by holding on to the pain, by not taking a place to heal. And sometimes we can't even see that God is at work because we would rather pour it on someone else. So we keep hoping and wishing that God would do this thing. And then now, instead of waiting on God, we're like Sarai and we're imposing our own plans and wills, not knowing that not knowing that we're hurting someone else, in the midst of us wanting what we want and getting what we want, because it's what we want, right? But is that true surrender? Is that really taking the time with God that you need? Is that really, making sure that you are really surrendering your life to God? Is that waiting on the Lord? Is that letting God heal you? I'm talking about the depths of you, the excruciating pain that keeps coming back up. Is that true surrender for you? Quiet time with Jesus, red-hearted sick. Is that true surrender for you? You got to be honest about the thing. You got to be honest about it and go to a place with God where you realize that the healing is really beyond you. So my question to you today, for you to think about, and meditate and pray over just what have you been holding on to that you need to heal from, that you need to surrender to God so that the healing can be done beyond you. Where do you need, what area in your life do you need for God to birth you an Ishmael? Whew. So that you realize that God is the one who sees you beyond your trauma, beyond your pain, that God sees you as a new creation, that when you come into Christ, you're no longer the old you, okay? Christ dwells within you. What do you need to let go of today? Where did you feel like you were left? Where do you feel like nobody's seeing you? And I want you to release that to God today. Release it. Say, God, you know what? I understand this healing is beyond me and I can no longer suffer from the pain because I know that this very thing that happened to me has me hurting others, has me hurting outside the pain, I'm stopping a generation, baby. I'm stopping a nation if I don't heal this pain. I got to keep going. Where do you need to heal? I'm not talking about the hard stuff it's going to take to heal. I'm not talking about what you keep making up in your head about healing. I'm talking about the real. I'm talking about the real that it's going to take for you to heal. I'm talking about the things that, you're going to have to do to get to the other side. I'm talking about really living just a life where you're living from God, that the pain don't even store up space in your heart. The pain don't even store up space in your body. That when you even speak a word, you know that it's coming from a glory space. Like knowing that, you know what? God gets the glory over my life. I may not understand everything. I may not understand why this person did it to me. But I understand that God is the one who sees me. That you would take off your shoes and understand at this very moment that you are at this place that is the well of the living one who sees you. That you be right there in that moment and understanding that I have all my pain. God, I'm running away. I done carried all my pain. And here I am to worship you. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you are my God. Here I am to give you all the things in my life. Here I am to say that, you know what, God, I may not get it. I may not get it. I may not be able to ever, complete this story on my own terms. But God, I know your will be done. I know it. I know your will be done in my life. But you see me, God. And if I walk with that pressure each day, if I walk knowing that you are with me in each and every way, if I continue to just walk, God, if I continue to walk, I know that you're working through me. I know that you're changing my heart. I don't understand these things. You tell me to forgive, God, I'ma forgive. You tell me to speak to him, God, I'ma speak to him. Hey, how you doing? You tell me to let go of the hate, let go of the pain. Okay, God, show me how to love them. Okay, you telling me not to hold them at bondage because I won't forgive them, or I feel like they putting me in misery. But God, and I really feel this, and I'm tearing up. God is giving you an Ishmael in this season. But if you aren't open to seeing it in the nicest way that I could say it, you may miss it. And as a girl coming from trauma and pain and hurt, I'm telling you that you need to keep a track record of God's handprints and footprints in your life. You need to keep a track record so that on them hard days, you know that God hears you. On them hard days, you know that God is there. You know that God is the one who sees you despite being surrounded. I pray that in this season, whatever you are going through, that you be reminded that God is still closer than close, that God is near you, that God sees everything that you are going through. Mm. And I pray that you have and you muster up the strength and the courage to go to God with all of the things and lay them out and have a real conversation with God about what happened. Be honest, lay it all out on the table. If you got to include names, just like Hagar did, she said, my mistress, but she said, Sarai, yeah, that's her. God, I'm going to let you know exactly who, so that God can really start to work through you and tell you exactly what to do. God gave Hagar a specific thing to do. And then God reminded of his love. So God may give you instruction, follow it. And then God's going to invite in that love and comfort that you need to go through and follow through. And I pray that God just meets you where you are when you do that thing, when you pray and when you talk to God about the real and what happened. That is all I have for you this week. I am just so grateful. I'm just to tears because I see what God is really doing for trauma survivors through Trauma to Testimony. And I know I probably talk about this every episode, but I cannot wait just for the vision to overflow and for God to really work through this, continue to work through this, because I know that it's freeing so many people to know, just how God has been working on trauma for years to come. As always, I love you. And I am just a girl. Oh Lord, I'm trying to make it through this. Who has some trauma in her past, but a whole lot of Jesus. A whole lot of it in my heart. I'll talk to you next week.